Dr. McCullough, first of all, let me thank you for giving us another Fluoride Awareness Week. This is most important for us, and I think for the American people and people everywhere who are battling fluoridation, to get the facts out. The major media, as you know, are not doing a good job on this, apart from Newsweek. And so hopefully this Fluoride Awareness Week will be another chapter in the long, slow death of fluoridation, this failed public health policy. You know, recently the American government gave us an indication of a huge crack that has developed in their mantra of fluoridation is safe and effective, safe and effective. They have announced that they're lowering the recommended dose. The Department of Health and Human Services has lowered the recommended dose, or concentration rather, recommended concentration for fluoridation levels from a range of 0.7 to 1.2 to 0.7, just the lower end of the range, which means that some communities in the United States, the hotter communities, will not change at all. So this isn't much of a victory, but it is a moral victory because, you know, for years and years and years they've resisted doing this, even though since the 1960s they knew that kids were getting far much more fluoride than they had anticipated when fluoridation began. When fluoridation began in 1945, they anticipated that 10% of American children would get dental fluorosis living in a fluoridated community. Dental fluorosis is splotchiness of the teeth, discoloration, mottling of the teeth, and only in its very mild form, and that was expected to be the trade-off between lowering tooth decay and not too much dental fluorosis. However, the CDC has now conceded that this rate is 41% of American kids between 12 and 15 now have this condition, and it isn't just in the very mild form. 8.6% have it in the mild form, which is 50% of the enamel impacted, and 3.6% either moderate or severe, which is 100% of the enamel impacted. So clearly this program, which was designed to reduce tooth decay and not produce too much dental fluorosis, has failed. And this lowering of the standard to 0.7 is a recognition of that. But it's only a shallow victory for us, because 0.7 parts per million is still 175 times the level in mother's milk. You know, mother's milk protects the baby from early exposure to fluoride. It protects the baby's brains, the baby's bones, the baby's thyroid, the baby's endocrine system from this very toxic substance called fluoride. Water fluoridation removes that protection. And Dr. McCullough, we have talked considerably about the evidence that fluoride is neurotoxic. We got over 100 animal experiments that shows that fluoride enters the brain, concentrates in different parts of the brain, interferes with receptors, interferes with enzymes, and so on and so on and so on. So there's no question from an animal perspective that fluoride is neurotoxic. Also, we have 31 animal experiments out of a total of 33, which investigated the behavior of animals, and they put them in mazes to see how well the animal learns and remembers. And in 31 of those studies, the animals that were exposed to fluoride were less able to remember and less able to learn. Now that's important because that gives a very strong biological plausibility base for the 43 IQ studies. 43 out of about 50 studies have shown an association with fairly modest exposure to fluoride and lowered IQ in countries like China, India, Iran, and Mexico. And when I say modest levels, I do mean modest levels. The average of 20 studies, 27 of these studies were reviewed by a team from Harvard. This is Choi et al. From 2012. Of those 27 studies, 26 showed a lowering of IQ. And of the 20, an average of 7 IQ points lowered, and of the 27, the 20 that where the exposure was from water, not coal, and for which the levels were given, the average of those 20 studies, the concentration in the high fluoride village was 3.52 parts per million. 3.52 parts per million is lower than the current safe drinking water standard for fluoride. That's incredible. So when the spin artists from the Pew Foundation, the ADA, the CDC Oral Health Division, when they come back and say, oh, these studies from China were done at high concentrations, not relevant to water fluoridation, not relevant to the United States, phooey, absolute phooey. Let me say it again. The average for 20 studies was 3.52 parts per million. This is lower than the current safe drinking water standard of 4 parts per million. If you remember, the National Research Council in 2006 called upon the EPA. They said that this standard is not protective of health, and they called upon the EPA to do a new health risk assessment. Now it's 2015. 9 years later, they still haven't completed it, and the American public is still living with this totally archaic and unprotective standard. But the most disturbing thing of all about this is that the last children in the United States that need to lose IQ points are children from low-income families. And these are precisely the children that are targeted by the pro-fluoridation fanatics. They are trying to, and their motivation is sound. They want to reduce tooth decay in low-income children. Yes, we all want to do that, but not at the expense, please, of lowering their IQ and making their future even less certain. This is outrageous. So, yes, it was a mini victory for us for them to finally admit that kids were being overexposed to fluoride, virtue of these huge dental fluorosis rates. But they haven't gone far enough. This was the opportunity, another opportunity to state again that this policy is outdated. We should be doing what the rest of the world is doing. Only a few countries fluoridate their water. Only 10 have over 50% of their population drinking fluoridated water. 97% of Europe is not fluoridated, and yet their tooth decay is the same as fluoridated countries. Over half the people drinking fluoridated water live in the United States. And the evidence that swallowing fluoride lowers tooth decay is extremely weak. As we've been on this program several times with you, as I've pointed out before, and you can also see it in our book. There are a couple of chapters, or 3 chapters, indicating how weak the evidence is that fluoridation, swallowing fluoride, actually lowers tooth decay. And in 1999, the Center for Disease Control Oral Health Division confirmed that, conceded that. They said, we used to think that to fight tooth decay, the fluoride had to get into the enamel, the growing enamel, underneath the gums before the teeth have erupted. So when the teeth have erupted, their enamel would be stronger to resist acid attack from rotting sugar. And they said, whoops, we were wrong. We were wrong for 50 years. We were wrong. We now realize that the predominant benefit of fluoride, is topical. It works on the outside of the tooth. Well, once they admitted that, it should have been the end of fluoridation. If you can achieve the effect topically, using fluoridated toothpaste and spit it out, why would anybody want to expose all their tissues to a known toxic substance when, as I said, they can brush it on the teeth and spit it out? And why force it on people that don't want it? Why violate the right of individuals to informed consent to medication? So, they had an opportunity in 1999 to end it, but they didn't. They kept it going. They had another opportunity. Instead of this lukewarm reduction to 0.7, which won't make any difference to hot climates, they could have gone one step further and said, we're going to change our emphasis from fluoridation to education. We need education to fight tooth decay in low-income families. We need education for their families to use better diet. We need taxpayers' money to subsidize better diet if necessary. We need better education for dental hygiene. And this isn't rocket science. Our kids are getting too much sugar. It's not a lack of fluoride, it's too much sugar that's causing tooth decay. And they've shown that in Scotland. In Scotland, they have a Child Smile program. It's only been going for five to 10 years, but in that time, what they do, as nursery school, the first schools that kids go to, they are taught how to brush their teeth properly. They're supervised, they're shown how to do it, and they're also given healthy snacks in school, getting rid of those fizzy drinks and sugar in all its plethora of forms. And they also involve the parents in this early process. The parents are also taught about these toothbrushing techniques and talked about the better diet. And each of these children get an annual checkup and treatment if necessary. And this has slashed the tooth decay rates in Scottish children. They're above schedule. I think they were aiming for 70% reduction. 70% of children caries free in 10 to 12-year-olds by 2020, and they're up to 73% already. So this has been very successful, and it's saving money. I mean, I think they slashed the cost of their dental health program in half with this program. So why aren't we copying these programs in Scotland, in Denmark, the other Scandinavian countries? They have found ways of fighting tooth decay without forcing people to swallow this toxic substance and without these dangers, these risks that we're talking about here, lowering of IQ being my major concern. I mean, who in their right mind would accept a trade-off of possibly lowering tooth decay if you're going to lower your children's mental capacity and their developmental chances? It doesn't make sense to any citizen. Why it makes sense to our government, to the Center of Disease Control, I can only assume that they just cannot admit that they're wrong. That I think they're following this formula. I think this is what's going on in these public health minds at the CDC and elsewhere. If we lose fluoridation, we lose the public's trust. We lose our credibility. We lose the public's trust. If we lose the public's trust, it's going to threaten other public health programs. And you don't have to go too far to see that when you get to these other public health programs, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar interests like vaccination. So it may just be that fluoridation is defending vaccination by proxy. And I'm not here to state that all vaccines are wrong. I'm not saying that. But I do agree with Barbara Lowe Fisher. We should never force people to take vaccination, and it's absolutely essential that parents get educated. And I do believe that our kids are getting far too many vaccines, and we should never, ever inject a newborn baby with organic mercury, which we did for years with thimerosal. So that's, I think, a rehash of many things, Dr. McCullough, we've already talked about, but there's one exciting development which I'd like to share with you. I was in Italy once again, a very intensive trip, which I got back to the United States on June 12th, having given 20 presentations in Italy in about 18 days. So I was pretty tired, but like an idiot, I'd agreed to go down to New Jersey the next day, that would have been May 13th, to take part in a television debate on educational TV out of East Brunswick, New Jersey. Unfortunately, my wife agreed to drive down with me, a 4-hour drive. I was not in the best of shape to do this, but fortunately she agreed to come down with me in it. But all the way I'm gnashing my teeth. Why did I do this? Why did I agree after this intense European trip? The very next day to drive down to New Jersey and try to find this place, blah, blah, blah. I was not a happy camper. But I got to the TV station the next day, May 14th, and it was worth it. because for a very rare thing had happened. A dentist, a local dentist who has been promoting fluoridation effectively and aggressively in New Jersey, had agreed to debate me. This doesn't happen very often, as you know, Dr. McCullough. His name is Richie Kahn, and he's the former president of the New Jersey Dental Association, so his credentials are high. And for 45 minutes, and we had a third person in the debating chamber, if you like, which was advantageous. It's always useful to have a third person to say, you know, both sides, rather than professional dentists against Looney Tunes, or however the people perceive this. I think it will be a marvelous campaign tool for all our many campaigners around the United States, around North America, and around the world. Because this dentist, bless him, gives all the arguments that they get away with when they give it on a solo platform. When they go and testify before the council on a solo platform, it's usually them, a posse of dentists and a few pediatricians, etc., against the unwashed rabble, the citizens who've got no credentials or what have you. And it's usually a walkover for these dentists and this mantra that they produce. But I was able to counteract, I think, nearly every single argument that he brought in, and add a few of my own. And I do believe if councils that are considering ending fluoridation are able to watch this videotape before they hear from dentists like Richie, and by the way, as I said in the program, hats off to him. He did have the courage of his convictions. He is obviously a true believer in fluoridation, and he wasn't bashful about giving the arguments as he saw them. And so I think it was a very good educational exercise, a very good exercise in democracy, if you like. Hats off to education television, hats off to the chairman, hats off to the lawyer who was there, and again, hats off to Richie for agreeing to participate. And hopefully this videotape will help to end this foolish practice once and for all. But at least we can try, we can see, we've tried everything we can think of. This is just one more piece of ammunition for people. And again, Dr. McCullough, I'd like to thank you for everything that you're doing, not just for the Fluoride Action Network, not just for fighting fluoridation worldwide, but for the Health Liberty Alliance, where you're fighting so many causes that many of us believe in, fighting for organic food, fighting against genetically engineered food, working with Dr. Jeffrey Smith, working with Ronnie Cummins of the Organic Consumers Association, working with Charlie Brown, Consumers for Dental Choice, getting rid of mercury amalgams, warnings about mercury in vaccines, working with Barbara Lowe Fisher with the American National Vaccination Information Center. These are all causes that I personally believe in, and I think most of our supporters believe in. And we just thank you for being there, making these issues more visible despite the mainstream media's failure to do so, to doing it with candor, doing it with honesty, doing it with transparency, and doing it as a scientist, backing up everything that you say with citations of the literature, and using people like myself who studied the issues very closely. So thank you again, and thank you also for Fluoride Awareness Week.